How does an insect like a fly land on the ceiling of a house? Does it stop, make a 180-degree turn, and stick? I love these questions because I had no idea, and the answer is really cool. I'll reveal it at the end, okay? Paulo Enrique asks, wouldn't solid rubber tires be better? It makes sense, right? With solid rubber, the tire wouldn't go flat or need inflating. Is the industry scamming us by selling disposable tires? There are several vehicles, especially those that operate indoors, like forklifts and wheelchairs, that use solid tires. But that's uncommon. Cars, trucks, bicycles, and motorcycles all use air-filled tires. Why is that? There are many advantages to having a hollow tire. Let's start with one of the main ones, which is the air. It works like a kind of spring. It absorbs the imperfections of the ground. So if the car goes over this glass ball, for example, which won't break, the tire will deform and squeeze the air inside. This pressure is distributed throughout the entire tire. The whole tire helps absorb the impact of this little ball. With a solid tire, you can imagine what will happen, right? The car will bounce and absorb very little of the impact with the ball. The second thing is that we think the solid tire will last much longer, but it will wear out just as fast as a regular tire. And then you'll have to throw away a lot of rubber. In the end, it turns out to be a more expensive tire, not a cheaper one. Another issue is that the solid tire is very heavy. Even a regular hollow tire is already quite heavy. Imagine if all of that was rubber. The car would consume much more fuel. So, having a tire filled with air is a brilliant idea. That's why, over 100 years after cars were invented, we still use air-filled tires. There have been some attempts to make a tire that's still hollow inside. But with rubber or plastic structures that can absorb the bumps from the terrain pretty well. And with this type of tire, you wouldn't need to inflate it. It's a tire that doesn't go flat. But so far, no one has invented one that people can actually use. In daily life, can you use it at the corner tire shop for your car? Members question. Inside a room with two doors, we have two people. Nobody and somebody. Nobody went out through one door. Somebody went out through the other. Who stayed in the room? Nobody? No, but nobody left. If nobody left, who stayed? No, but what about somebody? Somebody also left. Oh man, Iberê. If we could change the number of protons in an atom, what would happen? A proton is that tiny particle inside the atom that has a positive charge. Removing or adding a proton changes the atom. Here's the periodic table from the Great Book of Science by Manuel do Mundo. You'll notice that each chemical element has a number, which we call the atomic number, and this number indicates how many protons it has. So, for example, zinc is number 30. That means zinc has 30 protons. If we somehow manage to change this number of protons, the chemical element stops being that element and becomes another one. It might seem like something very rare, just a hypothesis, but it's not. This happens all the time. There is a type of carbon, for example, that we call carbon-14 because it has 6 protons and 8 neutrons, which adds up to 14. It's a common carbon found in living beings, where a process called beta decay occurs. It loses an electron, then a neutron becomes a proton, so the atom ends up with one more proton. It's no longer carbon, it becomes nitrogen. Carbon turning into nitrogen. This is just an example, okay? There are many ways to turn one atom into another. Though it's not often taught in school, it's actually not rare. This little book of ours, just so you know, has 4,701 reviews on Amazon and a rating of 4.9 out of 5. Want to learn more or see other books? The link is below. What's your biggest dream? Has it come true? I thought a lot about this question and came to the conclusion that I'm a very down-to-earth person. I don't keep dreaming about things that are too far ahead. When we started the channel, dreaming of 1 million or even 10 million subscribers was just a number. That doesn't really affect our lives. I had dreams for the channel, and those meant a lot to me. For example, taking a ride in a Navy submarine, or climbing a wind turbine tower, or maybe the biggest thing of all, building a submarine. It's cool to have a dream when you set a goal you truly believe you can achieve. For example, there's no reason for me to dream of being an astronaut at 40. If I started studying to be an astronaut now, it would take 15 years, and it's even harder to become a Brazilian astronaut. It doesn't make sense for me to dream about that from where I am. I still think making a video series in Antarctica makes sense. It's a dream I haven't achieved yet. The most specific dream I've had was getting into USP. When I was in high school, I faced a financial crisis. I didn't have money to go to college, and I needed to leave my hometown. Anyway, all the conditions were unfavorable, and I knew that if I got into a public university and came to São Paulo to study, all of that would change, and it was really tough. I aimed to study journalism at University of São Paulo, then one of the most competitive courses with 63 applicants per spot. So I studied for 2 years. Getting in made a huge difference in my life. If I hadn't passed the entrance exam, you wouldn't be watching this video. Now, I'm sure. How does our eye get used to the dark and we see better after a while? At the back of our eye, we have a series of cells that act as sensors. They are the ones that receive the light and turn it into a nerve impulse, sending a message to our brain. And then we have 2 different types, cones and rods. The cones are the ones that perceive light and the details of an image. We use these when there's plenty of light. Right now, for example, I'm mainly using the cones. In the dark, we use the rods, and they can't perceive colors. So you can notice that when it's really dark, you basically see in black and white. If you're in a bright place and turn off the lights, rods don't instantly start working. They take some time to kick in. It's like when you turn on your phone and it has to load all the apps. That takes about 3 to 8 minutes. So if you want, you can try it yourself. Go into a room with a very dim light, turn everything off, and leave only that one on. You'll see that after that time, you'll be able to see reasonably well, but mostly in a monochromatic way. If I make a Newton's disk with only green and red, will it look yellow? When you spin the Newton's disk, which is a circle with the colors of the rainbow, it turns white. We've already done this experiment here on Manual do Mundo in several different ways. So, how does it work? By adding lights. When you have lights of all colors reaching your eyes, you see white. For example, the white on the television comes from combining several colors. Let me show you this on my phone. I'll have to do this with the old microscope, because with the new one, there's no space to fit the phone. But look, the screen image is completely white. When I look at this under the microscope, I notice that it's made up of blue, red, and green dots, because white light can be formed by combining these 3 lights. Let's check yellow. The blue is almost gone, only green and red remain. Based on this, theoretically, if we take a disc and paint half of it green and half of it red, when you spin the disc really fast, what you see will be yellow. That's because our eyes aren't fast enough to keep separating the red from the green. They add up the 2 lights reaching the eye. The Newton's disk often isn't perfect since it loses some light, but let's try building a proper one. I'll spin it using an angle grinder and the disc itself. I prefer using pre-colored paper for a perfect, evenly distributed color instead of painting. I'll put a red one underneath and half a green one on top. Looks good. So, what do you think? Is it going to turn yellow or not? 1, 2, 3, it's yellow. Did this surprise you? I think this deserves a thumbs up down below, doesn't it? If my birthday is on February 29th, what day should I celebrate it? That would mean someone could only celebrate their birthday every 4 years. February 29th only comes around every 4 years. A year with February 29th is called a leap year. And that's a correction in our calendar, because when the Earth goes around the sun, it doesn't take exactly 365 days. It takes 365 days and a little more. That little extra each day adds up to 1 full day over 4 years. So, every 4 years, we add 1 more day to correct this calendar flaw. It's not astronomy's fault, but our imperfect calendar, since it can't measure the year exactly. But that's okay, right? Thinking specifically about birthdays, what's the logic behind them? You celebrate your birthday on the first day of your new age. So I, for example, have my birthday on December 4th. So when I was a little baby, I was 0 years old, just a few months old. I celebrated my birthday on December 4th, the first day of my new age, when I turned 1 year old. Within that logic, people who are born on the 29th should always celebrate their birthday on March 1st. But in real life, nobody does that because we should also consider leap years. In a leap year, my birthday would be on December 3rd instead of the 4th. And over the years, my birthday would keep shifting, moving further and further back as more leap years were added. It doesn't make sense. Simpler is better. In real life, people born on the 29th celebrate on either March 1st or February 28th. I think the 28th is cooler because it's still February. Saying it like that feels closer to the real birthday. And since 2012, there's no longer the option to put the 28th or the 1st on the birth certificate. You have to put February 29th, which is the correct day you were born. Why is Mato Grosso do Sul in the Midwest, even though its name says it's from the South? By the same logic, Rio Grande do Norte is in the Northeast, not the North. These names that have North or South at the end actually refer to something else. It's south of something, or it's north of something, and that's what happens with Mato Grosso. It was one large state until 1977, when it was divided into Mato Grosso and Mato Grosso do Sul, because that part is to the south of the giant state that used to exist before. Mato Grosso do Sul is named for being south of Mato Grosso, not because it's in southern Brazil. And we already called that region the Center-West, because it's in a central western area in relation to Brazil as a whole. Mato Grosso do Sul is named for being south of Mato Grosso, but it's part of Brazil's Center-West region. If, instead of being part of Mato Grosso, it had come from Paraná, it could be called Northern Paraná. What does Coca-Cola taste like? All sodas taste like things we know, except for Coca-Cola. Guaraná tastes like Guaraná from the Amazon. Fanta is orange, soda is lemon, Coca-Cola is… Yes, it's Coca and Cola. Coca is exactly what you're thinking, the plant from which cocaine is extracted. In the past, it was common to make drinks from coca leaf extract mixed with wine. There was a time in the United States when alcohol was banned. So, a pharmacist found a way to make this drink without alcohol and created the formula for Coca-Cola, an extract of coca leaf with a syrup of water and lots of sugar. And is this cola some kind of sticky thing they put in? No, it comes from the cola nut, a plant from Africa used to stimulate digestion and also give energy. Coca-Cola, like Guaraná, is named after its ingredients, showing its origin. But there's an extra detail. Since 1929, Coca-Cola has said it no longer uses coca in the soda's formula. And in the list of ingredients in Brazil, cola nut is still included. It says there, cola nut extract. But in the United States, cola nut isn't even on the list anymore. Since we don't know Coca-Cola's exact formula, it may no longer contain either of those two ingredients. About that car Elon Musk sent into space, what would you guess its fate will be? For those who don't remember, in 2018, SpaceX needed to launch a test payload, any kind of cargo, to test a rocket. They took the chance to send a Tesla Roadster with a mannequin inside into space. There's a website called whereisroadster.com where they unofficially say where the car is right now. Wikipedia has a great image showing the car's path through the solar system. It crosses the orbit of some planets. It leaves Earth's orbit, crosses Mars' orbit, and goes a bit beyond Mars' orbit toward the asteroid belt. It likely doesn't reach it and returns near Earth's orbit. So, it's like a planet, but with a slightly more stretched out orbit. The path this car will probably keep following will be like this, and it will pass close to Earth in 2091. Maybe we'll recover the car and display it in a museum, as Elon Musk originally intended. And then, it'll probably be pretty beat up. Space has no animals, rain, or oxygen, so the bodywork can't rust. But there's a lot of radiation from the sun without the protection of the atmosphere. So that red paint on the body will most likely fade. All plastic will eventually deteriorate, crack, and discolor if left out. In strong sunlight, it cracks, fades, and turns whitish. But in space, it's much worse, because you don't have the protective layers we have here on Earth. Iberê, how do ducks manage to float easily on water? Look, that's a question that seems silly, but it's not silly at all. One of the main reasons is that a duck's feathers are waterproof. The duck spreads a kind of oil on its feathers, always spreading this oil. You may notice it runs its beak over its feathers, making them waterproof. So when it goes into the water, its feathers repel it and the duck barely gets wet. Besides that, it also has an air sac in its body, which helps it breathe but also works like a kind of float. The duck is also a low-density animal with light bones. However, there's an important detail. If we give the duck a bath with detergent, it will lose that protection on its feathers and become a wet duck. It struggles to float after just one detergent bath. I've never heard of a duck actually taking one, but it does happen that ducks come into contact with oil spills. And then, yes, that gets into its feathers, and it won't be able to float as easily anymore. That's why when this kind of accident happens, people have to clean the birds to remove the excess oil. After that, we have to let the feathers grow back and become waterproof again, so it can return to the water. Iberê, what really causes that musty smell in clothes? Is it dust or something else? No, it has nothing to do with dust. There's something else. In this case, it's fungi. Fungi love a place that's humid, well-protected, and dark. That's exactly the kind of condition that forms in our closets and drawers. Even if you dry your clothes well in the sun, there might still be a bit of moisture left in them that you don't notice. Or even the humidity in the air can cling to the clothes and leave them slightly damp. Then, fungi can settle into the clothes. And if they're made of cotton, linen, silk, those organic materials, it's a feast for the fungus. They'll love to take a little bite out of your clothes. And that's one of the reasons why you shouldn't store used clothes. Because if there's any trace of sweat, a bit of skin that came off you, the fungi will love to eat it. Interestingly, these fungi are very difficult to see. It's rare to open the closet and see your clothes turning green with things growing on them. Usually, you'll just notice the odor. That's a sign your clothes are deteriorating. You need to wash your clothes, clean the closet, use a dehumidifier, and make the environment unsuitable for fungi. And finally, we've reached the question that gave this video its title. How does the fly manage to stick to the ceiling? Does it fly upside down like an acrobatic airplane? It's almost like that. We did some research and even found some drawings that show how the fly sticks to the ceiling. And it's strange for us to think about, right? Because it's hard for an animal to fly upside down, and the fly doesn't actually do that. When it's getting close to the ceiling, it gives an extra push. It's like it's jumping with a spring. And then, at the moment when it's almost there, at the end of that path, it turns its body and grabs onto the ceiling. Picture the fly. As it nears the ceiling, it gives an extra push. So it doesn't need to use its wings anymore from that point on. It's not flapping its wings anymore. At that point, it's just riding its own momentum. So, well, at the end of that momentum, when it's about to start descending, really close to the ceiling, it makes that slick little turn and grabs onto it.